Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you. Visit cloudsigma.com/thisweekin for a free $200 credit.
Today's episode of This Week in Web Design is brought to you by Full Sail University, offering immersive, fast-paced degree programs both on campus and online, designed for the needs of today's technology media industry. For more information, visit fullsail.edu/thisweekin. Today, Web Design Trends 2012 and 2013. Aure and I are going to share what 2012 web design trends you should be paying attention to, and we're going to predict 2013 web design trends about 3 months ahead of schedule from most people. Stick around, watch us work. Bienvenidos al episodio número 36. That is episode 86 if you've been watching since episode 1 or you're watching us on iTunes. I am your host, Jose Caballero, Chief Education Officer of the Skool, an education company. Joining me as always, freelance creative director, Aure Guimon.
Good to be here.
How do you like the mics, Aure? We feel like we're on a show.
I'm on a radio talk show, yeah.
Welcome, caller!
Caller, you're on the line.
You're on the line. All right, so Aure, it's good to see you. Today, the winner by popular demand, the topic you guys voted on Facebook between a lot of interesting topics is web design trends, which seem to be very popular, and we're covering 2012 and 2013, so we have a fun show, so let's get started. This is not another tutorial show. If you're looking for web design tutorials and you found us on YouTube and you're really pissed off that it is not, think of this like a daily show for web design. You know, we're going to talk, all right? Not just tutorials. Today's show is going to be segmented into 2012, 2013, halfway through or a little bit later. It's a half-hour show, and then we're going to wrap up with our predictions. If you're looking for tutorials, though, in the links, I put links for you. Team Treehouse, check it out. Lynda.com, check it out. They have great tutorials. How Interactive University, one of our great distribution partners, they're there. Now, this show's for students. If you're a student, this show's for freelancers, for entrepreneurs, and it's also for career switchers, people who are going from one career to the other. And I tell you this every single time. This show would not be made possible if it weren't for the support of companies like Adobe and their great product, Adobe Muse. Adobe Muse is software that enables designers to create amazing websites without writing any code. Planning, designing, and publishing original HTML pages is as easy as creating layouts for print. So if you're familiar with InDesign or if you're familiar with Illustrator and doing it in that fashion, that is exactly how Adobe Muse works. It's a snap to produce distinctive, beautiful, professional websites. Focus on design, not technology. Go to adobe.com/muse with the lowercase m on that for your free 30-day trial. Just check it out for 30 days. Do me a favor. Tell us what you think on the Facebooks and on the Twitters. Just let us know. So with that, again, thank you, Adobe. Let's go straight into it, Aure. Web Design Trends 2012. You might be asking the question, how did you come up with your trends and how are you categorizing them? So like, hey, what you and what army did this? What do you feel have been, the second question is, what do we feel the biggest trends are for 2012? And then the third question is going to be, that we're going to answer is predicting 2013. So to answer that first question specifically about how we came up with the categories, first and foremost, we've been talking about these all year.
All year, since the beginning of the show, since episode 1.
Since episode 1, we've been talking about a lot of these different trends. You guys ask us about it, and we cover them as topics on the show. Second, we looked online and we scoured the web. I spent a lot of time doing research and looking at the different predictions that were made last year and during the 2012, and we went through and we picked out the ones that we felt were the most important. That's the third answer to that, which I think we might have had a title card or not. But so we really selected the 3 or 5 trends that we thought were important. And one really important thing is we categorize them as business, creative, tech, and marketing.
That's what we do all the time.
Because that's what we do on the show. We believe that web design is not about code or about graphics only. It's really about the holistic execution of all 4 things: business, creativity, marketing, and technology. So with that, let's go into it. So the first question, what do you feel have been the biggest 2012 web design trends, Aure? Starting with the category of business. So drum roll, bring up business there. number one there.
Mobile and tablet. I mean, that's pretty much a given, right? Like pretty much everything that we're doing these days has got some sort of component, or it itself lives on a mobile or tablet device. Just apps.
What are you working on right now? Me and you are working on a project.
It's mainly just apps.
It's a tablet app.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's great for us because the school, we have been doing the redesign of a website as a tablet application, the Sartorialist. And then we've been doing a lot of mobile, but this is now we're beginning to do actual tablet design, which is interesting after doing it, for the school.
And it's really interesting. I see a lot of people like trying to create products so it's not just a website anymore. It's like people are trying to create actual apps and products for these devices.
Comprehensive products, and there's games, there's content, there's books, there's like all types of things that go on tablet. Jason Calacanis is doing it here at Mahalo, where he's doing a lot of apps, with content, specifically education content. So it's a very, and part of it is the monetization. The ecosystem that Apple put in place is actually one of the things that really makes it possible for people to really push towards that. So that's why business trends. And the second one is the cloud. What the hell does that mean? Like, I'm helping my mother-in-law recently get used to working in the cloud, because the issue of it's not your desktop, it's actually on a browser, and you have all your files there. And all that kind of stuff. It's kind of
it freaks people out.
What?
Right.
Talk a little bit about the cloud.
I mean, that's essentially this idea that everything lives in the cloud, like in some server somewhere, and you can access it remotely. It's not so much about the particular device that you're on. You can be on any type of device, and this is a really good thing that falls in line with something that we're going to be talking about later, which is workabouting, but essentially like just being able to access your files anywhere, and regardless of the device that you're on, you lost your laptop or there was a fire, that stuff lives somewhere and you can access it, or any number of people can access it.
And there's all types of cloud implications. One of them obviously is like the issue of that. But if you look at my my computer, I have up my Google Drive and my G Drive, and everything is on there. I mean, the scripts that you see every week. I don't know, my computer's probably not working, but the scripts that we use for the show, everything. Notice that the TWiWD web design scripts is the number one thing that I have in there. Things like Box.net, that's cloud-based storage that actually syncs your computer and you can use online, and Dropbox was the original gangster in
exactly.
cloud
that was the very first one. And it's interesting that you say that. It's so much so that now there are services, and if you pull up my screen, there's this one that I've been using as a reference called Otixo, which is essentially an aggregated cloud. So this thing will basically let you sync, your Dropbox, your Box, and it's got like all these little graphics, even Picasa.
So now you have aggregators for cloud.
Aggregators for clouds, right.
And Michelle, do me a favor. Can you set up for 2 minutes per? So let's go into creative. Just every time, just do 1 minute or 2 minutes. 1 minute, actually. Do 1 minute per trend. So let's go into creative. The first one. Again, and there's links below, but go ahead, Aure.
Responsive design. We've been seeing this a lot. I mean, and I think we've talked about it in previous episodes. And this goes back to the fact that everything now needs to work both on the web and on devices. So it's this idea of websites that the layout is adaptive. They call it responsive, they call it adaptive. The fact of the matter is, the website will reconfigure itself depending on the viewport in which you're viewing it in. So if you pull up my screen, I can show you something interesting. There's a website I just found right now, Googling responsive design. As I start to make the window bigger, or smaller, you can see that it starts to reconfigure all the way down to a tiny little, potentially mobile-sized screen. The content still works. I can scroll down. Everything looks great. It's not a compressed version of the original site. The content has actually reconfigured itself to work in a viewport of a smaller size.
And there's a lot of confusion between responsive versus adaptive, and I have on my screen adaptive versus responsive. What's the difference? And one is relative to process and iterative design, not just fluid layout. And I've heard it mentioned as fluid and as responsive. Like there's
fluid to me is different.
Let's just call it at a simple level. Responsive design is where when your format, your layout, then relays itself out for a smaller device, for a smaller screen width. So very simple for you as a designer, the thinking has to be very modular, and you have to begin thinking of how a site or something that you're designing is going to break down. And let's move on. So web typography, that's a huge one.
That's a huge one.
The ability to embed fonts, that has made such a huge difference, and we've covered it here. Single web pages, we had a few episodes where we designed a single web page design.
Yep.
What's a good example of that?
I mean, I've got some examples here.
The one that you had
actually...
up, actually. My favorite is the lean startup website.
Look at this one, how it does like all these
that's
like cool
cool
animations.
Whoa,
it's got
and
like
it
little
moves.
cars, and it's almost like a little.
That is sick.
Isn't
That's
it crazy?
parallax, which is another trend.
Yeah.
There's a parallax engine, which is kind of giving you the dimensionality that you have there. And you know what? That's brilliant. Well, one of the things, and I have one that's a little bit more straightforward that isn't as fancy as that one. Which is the Lean Startup website, which I really religiously use
It's a
as
really
an
nice
example.
site. And look how big everything is.
Everything is super big, which
Yeah.
is actually an interesting trend that we'll talk about in a
And
second.
there's less things on the screen to look at once. I mean, I think that's key. And you see that with things like Dropbox, for example, where they won't present you with a bunch of clutter. It's just one action per screen.
One action per screen, which actually that was one of the trends in our top trends for 2013, like what I call on-demand UI, which is you only get one thing that you need to do at that one time in space. And in the case scenario here, when you're scrolling, you just go, hey, do one thing, next do one thing. And it really is to deal with the attention deficit disorder that the web is becoming
There's
like
just so much clutter.
Skim technology. So it's technology. So let's move on to the next one, which is the technology trends for 2012. Keep in mind, this is stuff that you guys all know. If you're watching this and you're saying like, duh, yeah. So HTML5, first one.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's something that it's a buzzword that's out there everywhere. Everybody talks about HTML5. I mean, essentially what it boils down to is an integration of the new style of markup with CSS, with JavaScript used to power a lot of interesting interactions. That's essentially what we're talking about. And we see it everywhere. The scrolling site.
Well,
with all
we
those
just saw it.
moving
That's
things.
HTML5.
That's exactly
There's
what it
no
is.
Flash anymore almost. And almost most of, that I haven't looked at Flash almost.
I haven't seen it
Well,
in a
video
while.
players, obviously. And
Yes.
there's still
some uses for it. And then there's like some games that still use
games,
it.
but I don't look at games anymore. Now, that's just me. Some of you might be looking at, children's sites or might be looking at games online, and there's still a lot of use of Flash. But for the most part, I haven't
For like
designed something in
websites
Flash.
and like on
last
these
year we did something.
last year we did, but I think
Games.
yours is a good point. Like you go to any of these sites that are aggregators of interesting web design that's going on out there, you barely
see a lot of Flash,
you don't
yeah.
see it.
Yeah. Okay, so the other two in technology, and there's links below in the YouTubes where you'll see the different lists that we looked at to aggregate these. So Agile Development. That's one that I'm very passionate about, and it came out as a trend in what I saw, and I'm seeing it, and I hear it a lot with teams that I'm working with, and people are like, well, I don't like Agile, or I like Agile. So it's something that, for me, it's since 2007 or so when I got trained in Agile, I've been preaching and preaching and preaching, and I'm glad to see it come up on the radar as a trend. So jQuery in general, so we had an episode about that,
Absolutely.
That came up as a trend, like frameworks for development.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that.
I mean, and I think that's, again, going back to like all these interesting things that are happening as far as interactions on websites and a lot of these kind of motifs around user experience where things are moving around the screen and you're being given a very kind of directed just flow through a website. A lot of these interesting interactions that are happening are powered or can be powered by some of these frameworks. I think the interesting thing is that you don't necessarily have to code a lot of these things from scratch. You can have access to these frameworks, and these things are, like rollover effects or fade in, fade outs. A lot of these things are pre-coded, and as a developer, you can implement them very easily.
So what's happening is basically your ability as a developer front end, you're doing less back end development because that's already been done for you.
Right.
It's
like
ultimately,
prepackaged kind of, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So all the functionality is kind of standard. You don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Which is great. And we have episode, how do I build a mobile application, which is episode 35 on the YouTubes. If you guys go to our
we had jQuery mobile.
Using jQuery, which is a really great episode. I really highly urge you guys to watch it and check that out. So let's move on to marketing. So the top 3 trends in marketing that we've seen in 2012. And I'll start out with this one, because it's very near and dear to my heart. Integrated marketing. And that's a buzzword from ad agencies, and they call it integrated marketing producer or integrated marketing department, which is, the ability to do Facebook campaigns, to Twitter, to do, all around, and some of it even without a central place, like microsites used to be like what agencies really focused on a lot. But now it's getting much more complex, and there's a lot of different social touch points. So that goes into social pretty heavily. So Instagram, Pinterest, blogs, the idea of SEO, SEM, That's, I think, it's been one of the biggest trends of 2012.
I think that's huge. I mean, I think essentially as a company, you really need to keep your ears open, your eyes open to all these things that are happening in the social space and being able to react to them. You know, I've seen some interesting comments of companies where potentially some employees, you know, put a gag video up on YouTube and there was somebody on the higher up in the company kind of monitoring it and they were able to respond quickly to it. Like, no, this is not something we endorse. And they contain the damage done as opposed to maybe a more traditional company that wouldn't be looking at these channels. And then a lot of damage would be done to the brand and the company as a whole.
And that brings up the issue. That's what makes companies really hesitant to go out there and to really use a lot of the channels. But in a way, it's not a non-conversation, or it's no longer an issue. It's a price of entry issue now. It's such a given that, you know, brands and people and companies in general are like, okay, there's no choice. We have to go into this. And there's a lot of great stories we can go over where, you know, it's gone wrong and people mess up and people do bad things to your social media campaigns. But in general, I think the idea, though, is that there is this ecosystem design, not singular communication vehicles. But
it's not just the website anymore. It's the, you know, the Twitter background, the Facebook banner, the Pinterest like template for whatever. It's like a whole ecosystem. Like
and no wonder like older people are like just their brains are exploding in their gaskets. I see young people that are very social media savvy, like woo, and they have all this stuff, and then in a more traditional 20th century marketing manager, or it's just like And we'll talk about that in 2013 trends. So apps for everything. That was something that in 2013, 2012, you know, every single company, every single brand had an app.
That's exactly right.
Chipotle has an app, you know, when you go there so you can order your stuff. Like your grandmother has an app so you can...
I've got an app for, like, I just took a cab and I did it through an app, like the Taxi Magic app.
Taxi Magic. I have so many apps on my phone that I do different things for, from managing social media to news to... Like there's an app for that, which is a great.
There's an app for that.
Thing. So and tablet apps specifically for kids and entertainment. You know, Netflix. I'm watching Netflix on my laptop in one room, and I go outside to take care of the dogs for something, or like just to chill out in the backyard, and I just put Netflix on my phone. So and it's awesome. Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving on. So video search. People finding you via search or video becoming. The statistics are outstanding. Like how many people? YouTube is the second largest search engine.
Interesting.
So kids are not going to anywhere else, but they go to YouTube and they look for how do I do this? How do I do that?
Right.
And that's why one of the reasons why, if you look at our titles for our shows, how do I is the reason that's a title for our shows are titled like that on YouTube. And that's the number one way people find us. This show, This Week in Web Design, is on YouTube. All right, through video search. So. It was on all the lists, or in some of the lists that I researched, and I experienced it firsthand. So let's move on to 2013. So the question is, what do we predict will be 2013 trends, starting about with business trends? Bam, here we go. We need music in between the trends. Workabouting is the number one. What the hell does that mean?
That's a huge one. I mean, I think that goes back to that comment about the cloud and just having everything be accessible everywhere. I mean, I think that's just the idea that you can pretty much work from anywhere. Yeah.
So there's two things. There's a lifestyle aspect of that, which is people are doing flex time. People are working from home. Your team might be remote. We're working on a startup. Actually, we're working on the project together right now. The team doesn't actually have a specific office we've been to. I've met at cafes, etc. It's a trend that came up. I did a while ago that I saw many years ago, and a few years ago, meaning if you catch it. But also, there's a lifestyle issue relative to, you know, going to Europe and working from a while. If you read the 4-Hour Work Week, or if you read, you know, a lot of the basically people who talk about lifestyle first, work second. You can work from anywhere. My laptop. Everything is on Dropbox. All my active working projects are on Dropbox versus, you know, pictures and some other stuff that even that I'm beginning to back up on the cloud. And all the documentation is on, you know, Google Drive, you know, as documents, right? So I can put away my laptop, go somewhere, and have access to everything that even Adobe's on the cloud now.
Totally.
So I would be, you in the future, you won't need to take a laptop anywhere.
Not really.
You just basically go to a terminal where
you go to any terminal, you put in your credentials, and everything's just there.
And everything is just there.
Right.
And you get keyboards and any other accessories you need, you know, are either virtual or they're real. So that's a big one. So second, for the instant entrepreneur, what the hell does that mean? I'm going to bring up an example of that. So life flow management, can you bring up the example of life flow management?
Yeah,
So I'll explain it while you're bringing it up. The insert entrepreneur is basically that with training and with, look, Etsy, people, you have an idea for food cart of some sort in a place or whatever it is, you get yourself an iPad and a Square account, and bam, you're taking money, and there isn't this huge barrier between, your idea and the business that used to exist, in the 20th century, because there's so many logistics and so much stuff. If you're scrappy and you just know how to read and you have an idea, you can set up a business in a minute.
I think that's actually a really good point. I mean, I think the tools that you need to start a business online, the barrier to entry is getting lower and lower. Yeah.
The barrier to entry that exists now is knowledge.
Exactly.
So the biggest is knowledge and the encouragement to do it. So a lot of people have done it because of the economy. They have no choice. They go out and do it. My whole bet on the Skool is that, look, this is going to become so prevalent and it's going to become such a big issue that it's not going to be about specifically the tools to do it specifically, but about the knowledge on how to really get there and how to do it. So it's important. And then life flow management. Show the thing that on Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Awesome.
It's this idea that essentially you're pretty much tracking everything at this point. This idea of there's an idea behind it called big data. It's just basically tracking all these aspects of your life and giving you metrics around it. So this is a really cool project that I came across recently, which they're basically creating a platform, and they have hardware sensors around this platform, and it basically, for example, if you walk into your house after a long day at the office, it'll know to set the temperature of the house to a certain, a little bit cooler because you're stressed out or whatever. It's just basically sensors everywhere. And the thing that's interesting about them is that this platform it's got an API, so it'll allow a third party to create one of these sensors and actually implement it on this platform. So it's really interesting. You can have, just sensors that pretty much track everything, and kind of adjust all the things around you to kind of, just...
I love it. And is it a super elegant solution?
Yeah,
Are there pictures
absolutely.
of it on there, or is it just in the video?
There's you can watch the video. That's got a lot of it.
So
but
you can
here,
see a little bit of it.
Yeah,
But
yeah, go ahead.
Nike Plus, which RGA did.
Totally.
And one of the things that I've been harping about and I've been on my high horse about is for ad agencies specifically, is that this transition from doing campaigns to doing functional things around the particular brand. Nike, it's about sports, it's performance, athletic performance, and you have, campaigns, obviously, which are inspirational or great. But who the hell is watching TV anyway? So you're not going to catch the campaign, or even magazines. But you use Nike Plus,
right?
Which is great. And RGA, which kind of took White & Kennedy, which is the ad agency that originally has had Nike as a primary account. But their digital lunch got taken by RGA and by other kind of agencies that could do that. And that's fine. They didn't want to strength or focus on that strength. But if you're a marketer, stop thinking as a marketer and start thinking as a product developer. All right, so moving on. So that's life flow management, which is kind of related to big data, but I didn't want to use big data. So creative, on the creative side. So the first one is the beautiful enterprise. What the hell do I mean by that? That's something that I've seen kind of peak up and that I've been a huge advocate for, and one of the reasons a lot of times we get hired for, the group gets hired to do is, designing or making the user experience of an internal application of, CRM, ERP, all these things that if you're a corporate client, you had to just use. And what is interesting is that one of the reasons is because the sales process is always at the end about the sales process. And for example, somebody who's selling is selling to a CTO the solution for CRM for your company, which is customer relationships management. And the end user just is going to get forced to use it. But now end users are bringing their own solutions with them because of tablet and because of what's called consumerization of IT.
Totally.
Everybody wants shit to look good.
Right.
Make my damn work software look good. Remember me complaining about our payroll software, our
the time tracking software
all the time. I was like, God, why is this so awful?
Absolutely. And I'm actually working on a project right now that's an enterprise file sharing system that will help you integrate your Dropbox precisely because of that.
So it's cloud management.
It's cloud management. Exactly.
So one of the things for you as a designer, and the reason why all these trends actually relate to each other, and the reason why I broke them out into business, creative, marketing, and technology is that, A, they're relative to everyone because you are collaborating. So if you're a graphic designer and you don't understand, how to understand an enterprise solution, and what it is for. And when I was at Razorfish, one of the first projects I got to do early on in my career there was tax auditing software for, KPMG in Dallas. Graphic designers are like, bleep, bleep, screw this, man. enterprise software design. I should be doing cool posters and books and expressive stuff. I happened to go into the web design space and into software design, and yeah, I was working on helping those people make their tax auditing process easier. So I needed to understand tax auditing. I wish I still remembered. All right, Superflat. What does that mean?
I mean, I think that's just basically like, the way things are, right? Like a few years ago, people were doing everything like super glossy, that aesthetic that, just Apple put out there with their OS. And now I think people are gravitating towards something that moves away from that, just has a trend. And we see it with the Windows 8, the Windows 8 phone and the Windows, the new OS, where things are just they're just moving away from that.
Yeah, I think that it's really, you hit it on the nail. I mean, that Apple kind of set this tone. Android and everyone else copied them, and Samsung obviously copied them and got sued. And I think Microsoft was smart.
Right.
They said, if Apple's sticking this way, we're going to sag
right.
this way. Let's make everything flat and kind of side-scroll.
And they sort of copied it a little bit, like in Windows 7 and Vista, it was still like the super glossy kind of like, ripping off Apple. But now it's gone somewhere completely different, which is really interesting.
It is smart. I mean, they have some really sophisticated people working there. And, of course, they had the time and the money to do that. There's a video called The Future Vision of Productivity from Microsoft that I posted and I tweeted, but I have it here on my screen. If you get a chance, just Google Future Vision from Microsoft, which is funny. Sorry, Bing. Use Bing to look for this video, Future Vision. And it is a gorgeous video that shows a lot of the concepts that the Windows 8 phone and the Windows 8 is using in terms of how the mechanics of the interface work in a really elegant way, like that, like side-scrolling, et cetera. And it's all flat. There isn't, this bubbliness. And I think that what that highlights for me is that if you are a designer, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a marketer, whatever, whoever you are, that when you see a trend, that you don't have to assume that because it's popular that that's the only thing that works. Because people would assume that shiny buttons are the only way that an interface can work because Apple has had so much success. That is not true.
That's not why.
That is not why it's been successful. So understand why things are successful and don't mimic the design blindly is one of the main issues for that one. Big everything. You just talked about that.
Right.
What does that mean?
Just just less things on the screen, less clutter, bigger buttons, bigger typography, just more directed attention, right? Like don't give people a million tiny buttons to click on the screen. Just give them one.
That trend is really speaking directly to graphic designers who love little tiny type and like to make everything type. I've always had very clunky design because I'm a web designer, and people always say, "Oh, your shit looks like web design. Like you're a web designer." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I am a web designer." And it's getting even bigger. Like stuff's going to get even bigger. I like big buttons, and it's just going to get bigger, big type, big everything. So the next one is technology trends for 2013 that we're predicting. Here, you heard it first. Agile Domination. That sounds weird. That sounds like what does that mean?
Dominatrix.
Yeah. It sounds like a place Aure would go to. No, Agile Domination is that Agile is going to become a lot more mainstream within corporations, and legal departments are going to understand what the hell Agile means, software development.
Right.
And I just read a really great article in Fast Company this morning on the way here that talking about how, the fourth era of innovation, how corporations are going to become like startups, having small entrepreneurial teams internally.
Totally. It's not so much of a top-down structure like it used to be. It's more horizontal, flat. People are self-managed. They hold each other accountable. It's not, having to deal with multiple layers of, middle managers and things like that.
So the way I illustrate this idea, and I'll do it really quickly in this diagram. So this is a corporation of the 20th century where they had to consolidate and vertical integration. If you don't understand what that means, look it up. In order to have efficiencies of scale and become competitive and just crush the marketplace and do stuff. Whereas you had all these small companies, entrepreneurial companies, that were able to move strategically a lot faster because they were a lot smaller. So what's happening, what I'm seeing happen in the future, and the trends that we looked at were interconnectivity, let's say, between cloud apps is happening. Actually, here, I'll just use the same diagram. Is where a big corporation is just going to mirror the marketplace. It's going to turn into the same exact modality almost as, this is sketch time with Jose for business concepts. Should have had a whiteboard. So it's just basically going to be a set of small divisions that are interconnected. Some of them might be loose for a while because they're developing something instead of this 20th century model. And it's happening right now.
It's about flexibility and being able to move quickly and iterate quickly. Like if you're creating product, for example, you have to be able to just kind of iterate very rapidly, and I think with a small team that's kind of self-managed, you're able to do that a lot more than with a traditional
team.
Right.
So Agile even instituted, and mark my words, hear me now, believe me later, as Hans and Franz would say, this is going to be a huge trend moving forward. Simple CMS customization. What we mean by that is that even the issue of not even having to write code to get a CMS. Things like WordPress's dominance of content management. That's a consumer open source almost content management platform that's very workable.
Totally.
It's going to get simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler. UX for developers, and what I mean by that is that the user experience process is not going to be only the purview or the realm of user experience designers or designers. Everybody's going to understand user experience and work within the user experience processes and the standard processes, which of course you can learn at the Skool, theskoolrocks.com, which teaches the standard processes for successful web projects. Wow,
that's great. That's a great promo there.
Really nice promo right in the middle. So finally, last and not least, which is really exciting. Let's talk about this, Aure. Social media ecosystem. You've been familiar with this for a long time. What the hell does that mean? The marketing trends.
You want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah. So here's an example, and I have right in front of me on my computer, is how I manage all my Twitter accounts for all the different things that we're doing. It's using Hootsuite. So there is this whole ecosystem, and in this case, it's Facebook and Twitter applications being managed. But you can go even further, and go into things like HubSpot, which is an amazing platform that integrates, and actually they have a single-page design for their homepage, where they integrate all the different components that you need to run all of your marketing across the web, social media, email marketing, paid search, etc. So there's this social ecosystem management and having enterprise tools, and I've read about it where it talks about basically the enterpriseization of social. The Dachas group in Austin, has been really harping and working on the same issue for the last 3-4 years, where eventually social media will become enterprise level managed and in really simple like dashboards where you can see what all your campaigns are doing, et cetera. It's already happening little by little, and it's even going to happen more. And I see organizations transitioning through this. And again, managers that are still 20th century. And listen, it's a huge percentage. It's 80%, 90% of the business population that's kind of going through this open eyes transition. We think because we're in the business that adaptation happens a lot. Adaptation happens faster. It doesn't. It takes time for people to actually get to it. So simplified data analysis. So the example for that is very similar. Is that right now, Google Analytics and this and that is all very complicated. And people aren't really understanding how they set goals, how they measure, and how they really mechanically do, what they do, which understanding that it's no different than the 20th century when you were measuring, consumers and doing it with real people or with the physical world and, polls and all this kind of stuff that you actually call people and the means of communication that you used in the 20th century. But the 21st century, it's becoming simpler. So Kissmetrics is a really good example, same thing, of something that manages all the metrics across your different, e-commerce, web, mobile, etc. So that's
and helping you chart like goals around those, so it's not just so much about showing you the fancy graphics anymore. It's about, giving you insights as to like how you can potentially improve certain areas of your business that might be a little bit, underperforming, or how to make sense of, what you're seeing in all those graphs.
Well, here's an example, and I'll bring up on my screen here, and it shows a very nice graph. People are starting to get used to this from Facebook, that they have, these kind of graphs of like numbers. Numbers are hard to grasp, right? Yeah. Because there's so many, there's so many. That was the biggest understatement. What is it? Not understatement, master of the obvious. Numbers are hard to grasp because there's a lot of them. But it's hard for us as people, not just creative people, not just people, to wrap our heads around it. It's really hard for me to deal with quantity or quantifiable data, but it's easy for me to look at a graph on Facebook and say, oh, more people are doing this when I did this, or I can see cause and effect from something that I did on a campaign on the MailChimps, and I did that. So I'm mentioning all these different tools, and one of the things that just finally. Well, let's go to the last one, and I want to have like some closing thoughts, and I'll start with you, Aure. So business model integration. What I mean by business model integration, again, hear me now, believe me later, is where marketing people aren't being brought in at the end of the equation to say, hey, how do we promote, create a marketplace for this product and all these different channels, whether it's social media, TV, print, whatever it might be, but that they're actually at the table during the inception of the product, during the creation of the product, and they're really there to, as an advocate for the consumer, to ensure that not just, it's a user experience driven model. Apple is a perfect example of this, that their marketing people, what the hell do Apple marketers do? Like a lot of people say, of course, there's a lot of block and tackle marketing, like, AdWords and or whatever, all the mechanics of that. But they just educate people about their campaigns. Even the creative stuff that you see, ooh, look, Siri, Samuel L. Jackson. All he's doing is using it to cook something, right?
Totally.
So it's a use case in a film.
You need to start thinking more as a product person.
Start thinking as a product person. You're no longer a marketing person at the end. You're a product person at the beginning. And that's one really great place to follow Apple. And again, the gospel that I'm preaching and that I teach at the school is that it's integrated from day one. There is no such thing as, the marketing component being off in la la land until it's time for the marketing person. It's from the beginning, everybody's integrated in the planning process.
And I think that's key right there. That word, I think that's how I would sum up everything that we've talked about is integration, basically. You're looking at integration of all your files, integration of all your data, integration of teams that you're working with. You don't no longer have the marketing people separate from the, creative. Everybody's kind of in the same room collaborating.
That's it. Your last word right there, collaboration. Those are really great last words. So again, if you watch this show from the beginning, one of the reasons even we started doing This Week in Web Design, and if you look at This Week in Web Design last year, the season where we did a live project, and a lot of people tell me that they've been watching since day one, or that they go back and they rewatch, those live project kind of the beginning. The entire inception process, the Skool OS, what we developed for that, what I worked to develop, at the group for that was exactly this, predictively saying that in the future teams are going to have to work in close collaboration in order to effectively execute within the digital space, and they're going to have to speak a common language, being that of user experience and in this case also Agile, which is the two things that make up the Skool OS. All of that is, people think of terminology, et cetera, all it is integration of the disciplines in a collaborative framework.
Totally.
Holy crap.
That's it right there.
That's it right there. And the processes to do that, which, by the way, are not technology processes, they are people processes. So hear me, folks. If you're a company, if you're an individual, your job in order to survive the 21st century is not just acquiring tactical skills like you would, for learning Photoshop, learning how to code HTML, learning how to do jQuery, learning how to code in Ruby, learning how to, whatever it might be. Those are your tactical skills. The broader subset of skills that you have that allow you to speak the language of the other disciplines are equally important. And if you don't understand, or if you don't have the comfort level across those, you're just going to work in these kind of specialized fields. And it's not going to give you the maximum value, A, in your career, and B, in the amount of what you can earn, basically. That's why agency experience or startup experience really helps people when they go into and they work in a team and they see how dynamic working
and that's helped me a lot, just coming from a background in more of the creative, just being in a room with all these startups that I'm working with and just, hearing the conversation of, the things that the marketers are bringing up and the technology people at the very beginning, and the more you're exposed to it, the easier it gets just to, insert yourself into this process and, just have a voice and being able to speak in the language that these other disciplines are kind of like speaking. Right.
So we're going over time a little bit, and I want to say thank you again. We can talk for hours about this. Again, Aure said it very eloquently, integration and collaboration, those are the key things, and if I were the Reverend Jesse Jackson, I would really go crazy on those two words. I want to say thank you to Adobe for their amazing product, Adobe Muse, which helps you integrate and collaborate
with
I was going to say with yourself. because you're going to actually do it yourself. Go to adobe.com/muse for a free 30-day trial. Watch the episodes, the last few episodes that we had. Tell me what you think on Facebook. Thank you again to Adobe for making this show possible. I also want to remind everybody that at the end of the month, we have Inner Circle. And if you go to thisweekinwebdesign.com or TWiWebdesign.com, you can sign up for the Inner Circle program, which is basically the ability to work with different people. If you have a challenge as a freelancer, if you're an in-house web designer, if you're a producer, a developer, this is a great forum for you. Each week we present the progress of our challenges and how we're doing those. And this week's was pretty amazing just to see the breakthroughs that people are making during the Inner Circle calls. So this is a great opportunity, again, to have me as a coach. Right, Jose's tour schedule, the Jose's Fall U.S. Tour of Awesomeness. I'm really excited. Even though I got a little sick from traveling a few weeks ago, I'm recovered and I'm getting ready for the next event, which is going to be before you start defining your brand here in Culver City at Mahalo. There is a link below. It's going to be exciting. It's Summer School 3. This is the third module and the most important module. If you really want to understand what the hell Aure and I are talking about and probably experience the biggest single trend of 2013 and of the 21st century, I'm starting to sound like Donald Trump, the biggest single trend of the 21st century, come to Before You Start on September the 22nd. It's going to be an amazing workshop. If you've been to them, you know how awesome it is, so I really look forward to having you there. Right immediately following that, on the 27th of September, I will be in Washington, D.C., and I'm looking forward to seeing our entire contingency of This Week in Web Design viewers in Washington, New York, and the area. Please come to the How Interactive Design Conference. It's going to be the best $500 or however much it is. Doesn't matter. It's $1,000. Spend it, because you're going to get a chance to participate with a lot of awesome people, get to know people. I'm going to be opening the conference. I'm going to be closing the conference, first in Washington, D.C., and then in San Francisco on October the 29th and the 31st of 2012. One conference is, and it's a very unique conference because it's kind of a retreat, and it's AIGA Cincinnati Design Revival on October 4th through the 7th in Pleasant Hill, Kentucky. Again, Pleasant Hill with 2 L's, even though there has 1 L. The 4th and the 7th. If you're in the Cincinnati area and you haven't signed up for this great opportunity, we're going to do workshop-style kind of collaboration and teaching during that. It's just going to be a lot of fun. And again, the 29th. There are other dates that are being added to that as we go, and look for more information. One of the things that I'm going to be doing, and I want to say thank you to Media Temple, who has been giving us some awesome swag and some awesome support, is that I am going to be live blogging during a lot of, during the entire tour. And I'm really excited, actually. I just recontextualized, that's funny, redid my Tumblr blog because it's tied into, and again, this goes back to, the effective management, right from Instagram and from your different, social media panels. You can post to all the different social medias. And it's a personal blog. I'm going to be posting around the event, and I'm also going to be posting design and things that I like from Tumblr. So again, if you're a designer or if you're a developer and you just want to follow along with what is josecaballero.tumblr.com, and you can follow along with what's happening during the tour, and also on my blog, which I'm going to get back up soon. You'll be able to follow along during the tour. So don't forget, here's actually Start Garden, which was a few weeks ago, actually. Now, only a week and a half ago. Time flies by really quick. So join us live. Thank you, Aure, first of all.
No worries. This was a really fun show.
This was a good episode.
Yeah.
It's like we're on the radio, and now a talk show. I also want to say thank you to everybody who makes this show possible. If we bring up that card. This show is not done by ourselves. Carolyn, Jason, of course, who's a generous host and the boss. Carolyn Good, who, it's not Caroline, it's Carolyn. Okay, I always get it wrong. General manager of the network, Aure, of course, our Venezuelan co-host, Zach, who's our TriCaster, operator, Brandis, who's our tech goddess, Michelle Wong, who's our producer and also does all the graphics, Sophia, who's our wrangler, and without her, this wouldn't be made possible, and Jennifer, who's our makeup artist, who makes us look pretty. And today, actually, we had a guest makeup artist, and her name was. I think it was Charlie or something like that. Well, close enough. She was awesome also. So please join us live next week at 2:30 p.m., 5:30 Pacific, Eastern if you're on the East Coast. And don't forget to like us on Facebook, on Google+, on the Twitters. All the links are below. Please subscribe on Facebook, but also subscribe to the iTunes if you want to watch stuff on your phone or on your tablet. And we look forward to having you again next week when you watch his work.